Let's go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on enabling and debugging business automation. My name is Simon. I am the R&D lead here at Trizatech, and I'm joined by my colleague Maciej. We will be doing our technical demonstration. He's our R&D lead at Trizatech. Hi, Maciej.
Hello, everyone.
All right. So today's presentation format will be about 25 minutes of presentation followed by a Q&A session. At the top of your screen, there should be a chat window where you can ask question. Feel free to ask question. We may address some of those questions while we do the webinar, but most of them will be answered at the end. So I guess we should get started. Oh, forgot to mention, we will also be sending the video to everyone at the end of this presentation. So the floor is all yours to get started. Or, well, I will get started. So let's just switch to the other page, I guess. So the goal of today's webinar is to discuss some of our new features that we introduced in our major release at the beginning of July. So today we're going to focus mostly on these three features: the testing and debugging capabilities for decision and processes in our modeling environment, also the system of engagement, or the forms that we can create to have processes and decision consumed by users, and also our system of records, which allows us to have a data storage out of the box that provide data storage across different processes and decision instances. So I guess you can take it over with the demo, Maciej, and the demo will take most of our webinar, where we're going to show you a simple vacation request, but how all of those features play into that vacation request.
Exactly. Thank you, Simon. So as the title of the webinar is Enabling and Debugging Business Automation, those three features that Simon just highlighted are actually working together to bring those to deliver that to the end user. So we start with the presentation of the use case. So as Simon mentioned, we have the vacation request process that actually uses as well a decision, the vacation approval decision service. So we will be able to actually look at different scenarios, how to make use of that. So the end users of that is an employee that would like to request a vacation, and that goes through the set of steps and decision service that will actually evaluate the conditions. But the important part here is to mention the data stores here. So this is what we had one of the features, the system of records. So this is an external storage, a lightweight storage for information that the services can interact with. And that is both for reading and writing. But what is extremely important is that it actually lives outside of the service instance or the process instance, but at the same time, then this can be accessed at any time within your process. As you can see here, for the decision, we actually read the data from it to be able to look at the actual user. And in this particular case, it will be for the user who initiates the instance of the service. And based on his or her email, we get the vacation days that are still remaining.
So Maciej, just quickly, basically what you're saying is that the system of record is basically usable as any other
data object, exactly.
Data object would be.
Exactly. So that was the whole point of it, that from the person who models the process or the decision, it is pretty much the same thing. It's just the life cycle of it is different. The storage of it is different. But from the execution perspective and modeling perspective, it looks pretty much the same.
And it is accessible using filters in the same way a normal collection.
Exactly. So knowing that data, as you can see, we can read from the data store or we can write to the data store. So if the approval was given, we can immediately store that information by removing deducting from the remaining days the amount of days this vacation request was for. So speaking about the data stores themselves, they can be found in the personal settings data store product. And this is where you can actually look at the content of it. So you can have different types of the data store, either multiple columns or single columns. In this particular scenario, we have multiple. So we have the ID, name, and days that simply provides us the data store for our vacation days.
So this would be kind of the data definition of the data store.
Exactly. Because as we mentioned, the data object and data stores are being seen as the same thing from the modeling perspective. They are backed by the data types as well. And with the content, we can work easily as well. So you can either import the content, export the content, or work with the content live, so to say. So you can export.
And this is integrating basically with Excel, right?
Exactly. So we have the Excel format of the data store, and we can live update this information. We will see as well as we go with the execution of our process, we'll see that this information will be updated by the service instance as we go there. So just note that we have 14 days. For me, I'm going to run the vacation request, so we'll need to just slightly memorize that so we see that as part of the demonstration. All right, so knowing the use case very briefly, so let's get going with the main part of it, is that how we can actually test it and how we can troubleshoot in case we wanted to get more details into it. And for that, we can easily start our model in the test mode. It performs the deployment of our model, makes it available for execution. And what I would like to highlight here as well is that every single instance of this test model is completely isolated, meaning that if you have multiple users running at the same time, they will not interfere with each other. So as soon as we start our test mode, we have the options to interact with the service by providing the input data. And to provide the input data, we can give that in different ways. So we can fill in the form manually. We can upload a file that can be taken from a template as well. So we can have JSON, XML, and Excel file that we can use as a template. We can use the test cases, meaning that once you run your model, you can actually save the results of it, and that becomes your test case. So you can then replay them, or you can use the test data. I would like to spend a few seconds on the test data here, because it's quite useful, especially when it comes to testing, that you have multiple scenarios to test and you don't want to fill in constantly the same values all over again. So you can actually pre-fill a set of values that are bound to the data type, meaning that they are shared across the users within the environment, and then allows you to populate with different values and just simply cherry pick from which values you wanted to run the particular scenario with. At any point in time, you can edit that and you can name it. So as mentioned, this is shared across users. So it's important as well to name it properly so it's actually understandable for everyone who can interact with that.
Quickly, we have two different things that are called test, and just want to make sure that we make the difference between the two. So the test data, see it more as a repository of inputs that you can use for the processes and decisions. And these inputs are keyed by the data type of them. So if you have, for instance, a customer data type that you reuse across different models, you can create data definition of customers that you can reuse in different services. The test cases are a little bit different because they are recording both a set of inputs and a set of outputs. And you can also validate later on that given the same inputs, you get the same outputs as well. But and they are also scoped to a single service or model. So that's the main difference between the two. Depending if you want to create a bank of data to be used across your processes and decisions, you can use the test data. If you want to create specific test cases for one model, you can but what's also interesting is that you can start from test data and record the result of that as a test case as well locally. So you can mix and match those approach pretty easily. Go ahead.
Indeed. So that comes down again to the life cycle of it, when it's managed and how it's managed. All right, so we have the data, excuse me, provided. So we can actually now run this scenario for this one. So we can simply go through that, and we immediately get the information what was executed, in which half of the workflow or the process we went through. At the same time, we can see the output of it. So the vacation request needs to be done at least 1 week prior the starting date. And then we can look at the trace, all the information that we can capture through the execution. Plus, we have the data types as well. We can easily look at the complete one, or we can just select one in particular one and then look at the data of it. The interesting aspect about selecting the data objects here is that as long as the instance is active, you can modify that. And when you could modify that, let's look at the other scenario, where you can actually want it to stop and go step by step through execution of our process. So for that, we can actually suspend and resume and on different places of the model. So we can actually suspend before the activity is executed, or after activity is executed, or on the sequence flow, meaning on transitioning between the activities. Another aspect of suspending is that it does not belong only to that model that we are currently in, but we can have the options to interact with the sort of parent-child relationship, meaning that if we invoke decision, like in this particular case, we can open this model and just put the so-called breakpoints on that model as well, and they will suspend on that level when we go. So let's get this going as well. So if we start here, we immediately stop before we actually execute that. And this is what I would like to mention, that when we look at the Excel file, and for my remaining days were set to 14, we have that as well. So we can actually look at the values. So this is the values we provided. We know that they are too early, so they will be rejected. So we can actually change them at this point in time. So we can just simply go from the week 22nd, same amount of days, and then just continue there. It continues.
So basically what you're saying, is that when we put a breakpoint before a task, we get the data that's being passed to the task, and we can modify it live before continuing. And it would do the same thing as well on the output. If we put it at the output, we would receive what has been calculated by that task, and then we could change it before it returns to the process.
Exactly. Right. So as you can see here, we evaluated the decision, or we went into the evaluation of the decision, and since we had the breakpoint there too, we can see the content of it. And as you can see, the decision already knows the values that we modified at the breakpoint in the process model. We can simply, if we would like, we can change those values here as well. Everything is in this context available for execution and for changes. At the same time, if you look at the number of days, this is actually the output of this decision. So this becomes the input of the vacation approval status, which becomes again an input of it that can be modified as we go. As soon as we submit it, we can just remove the breakpoint from here. It goes to the manual activation, and as you can see, we have the information about what was executed and what is actually waiting on. So now we can simply go to the status, we can approve it. Well done. Just so we can approve it with a comment, and as soon as we just continue, we go through the successful path till the end, and the vacation approval is given. So we can then look at the data store there too. So if we look at the data store and just search for the vacation one, look at the content of it. Just say it, but we just bring it from the other window. And as you can see, it has been updated. So now it's 10. So the 4 days that I requested through the service was automatically updated in the data store as well. Again, you don't have to go back and forth to a different data stores. You don't have real data stores like your databases, but you can use this system of records as a lightweight storage for a simple tabular kind of data at the moment.
Magic, one thing I would like for you to show a little bit is you can use as well the trace window to kind of better understand what exactly happened and how we can use it to troubleshoot if there's any issues in the execution of our service, basically.
Yeah, so in general, everything that is being executed is sort of captured and recorded. So we have a complete trace of this information. So as you can see, for every activity, we have the in and out, meaning that what was the given to that activity and what this activity produced. So at that particular time, we can easily look at the information that are being taken from different levels. And that can give us a decent set of information to understand where we were and what was done in what order, so to say. At the same time, using the breakpoints on different places allows us to actually suspend the execution, inspect it, and even modify it as we've shown in the presentation.
All right, good.
Good. So that sort of introduces the two aspects that we wanted to highlight. So it's the data store, the system of records, plus the debugging and testing capabilities to make sure that we can easily get going with our model as we plan to work on it. Something that might be an immediate question regarding the debugging capabilities or testing capabilities in this scenario, if it's possible to modify it, the actual model, meaning either change the data mapping or the content of different activities or add and remove activities from that model? The answer is no. This is a read-only model. So we wanted to focus on testing the aspects of it. You have the options to inspect the data and modify the data, but without the modifying of the model on its own.
All right. Also, another question I'm seeing in the chat, I guess some people have not necessarily been used to using data stores. So could you tell what's the major difference between the data stores and the data object?
Yeah, so the main difference is actually the life cycle, right? So the data objects that are part of the service instance or process instance live as long as the process instance is alive, meaning that it is stored together with the process instance, while the data stores actually are outside. So this is like an externalizing data, but exposing that set of information to the instances at any point in time, meaning that they can be read and updated at any service instance or even different services. So we have here the vacation request that is a service, but you can have another service that is, for instance, management of that, or like HR activities that allows you to modify, like add additional vacation days for a group of employees and so on and so forth. So that will differ on that level. So the life cycle and lifetime of those objects is different.
Perfect. So I guess we can show how once we have a working model, we can deploy this and work with our new system of engagement to customize the user forms for this.
Exactly. So this is as simple as just pressing the deploy button, and we have the service that is now fully deployed and available for the end users. So the system of engagement actually starts with the service library where we are right now. When we deploy it, we have the service library, we can interact with that. So we have the form buttons. So if we just click on that, this allows us to interact in the form of an end user. And worth noting, this is fully generated, meaning that you don't have to build this UI, but at the same time, you have the complete quite sophisticated way of modifying the content and look and feel of it, which we will present in a second. So this is how you would interact as an end user, and that is to start the instance or interact with the user task or the resume points, as we call them. You can have an exact same way the end user facing form-based interaction. But what is a little bit more interesting is that you have different modes of the form. So it could be as we shown on the debugging, where you can input the file as the data input for your starting your service, but you can go into developer mode, which at first look, it looks the same. But there is a quite substantial difference that you have those tabs at the right-hand side. And the interesting part is that you can interact with the look and feel of the form by simply modifying the CSS. So for instance, if we just modify that, we can change it.
And those basically are examples of modification we
yes.
give as an example. They're commented out, but basically, yeah.
Yeah, to just get you started, so to show you how you can change the look and feel of this presentation. Or for instance, if you would like to add logo to your form. Pretty much all the features of the CSS allow that you have, you can modify it to fit into your organization needs and requirements when it comes to look and feel of the end user facing interfaces. So in this particular mode, we are currently in the live editor. So as you can see, all modifications are immediately applied, but this is not the only one. You can actually save them as well, and then save them on a different levels. So you can save it on a global level, meaning that if you save it there, all service instances of that DES instance will get this style sheets applied. You can set it on a particular environment or particular group of your services or the artifact. Depending on which level you want it to affect, you can do that automatically by just saving the particular set of style sheets, and they will be immediately applied when the users interact with that.
Also, maybe a quick note for customers that also deploy those services as containers. Basically, the styling will also be taken into account and baked into the containers as well.
Correct. But modifying the look and feel with style sheets is not the only thing here that you can do. Another interesting aspect is if you want to look at the actual service description. So again, this is, as the name suggests, developer focus. So it provides more technical details. You can load and save as well. We have the form inputs, and this is where you would like to, for instance, understand how you would interact with the service through the API. So this gives you a complete JSON information about what data types are expected and in what form. And it works with the round tripping. So if, for instance, we select a date here, it's filled in directly here, but at the same time, we can say change it here, and it changes there as well. So it's a complete round tripping when it comes to interaction with the form and the data model here.
So basically, this is really useful for, So it's really useful for people that want to understand how basically what you build from the user interface is transmitted directly to the service. So that gives you kind of an insight into that.
Yeah, and if you interact with that, you will get the information about the results as well. So as soon as you submit it, you get the result in the form of the JSON, so you can inspect that as well. All right.
Yep.
I guess that would be pretty much from today's demonstration, unless, Simon, we have any questions that we can tackle right now before we jump to summary.
I think we should do the summary and then give a little bit more time for people to ask questions. I have a few of them, but I would take more.
Okay.
So if you can put the slide. So basically, we've introduced or presented, I would get more precisely, some of the new features we have released this summer that enables business users to better understand what's happening with their processes and decision by debugging them and really being able to see where their errors are while building models for automation. And also some features that we also had in those recent release that may be of interest. We also integrated the SCIM provisioning. That's for a little bit more for the IT guys, but it is a way of provisioning users based on a identity provider. We also improved our API responses so that they can fit a lot of different needs when we want to create services from BPMN process or DMN decisions that would fit an API instead of designing the process and then fitting it and getting kind of a definition. If we want to hit kind of a target, it makes it easier. And we also released something that I invite you all to look at. It's our automation cookbook that has a lot of recipes for automation and some healthcare specific recipes as well. So I guess we'll go with questions. I'll try to rephrase them a little bit to make a little bit more sense. Well, not sense, but put them in context. So Magic, the demonstration we did was mostly on the workflow modeler. We dabbled a little bit on the decision modeler, but someone was asking, do we have kind of the same debugging feature for the decision modeler as well?
Yes,
do you want to take that?
Definitely. They are exactly the same. So you have the option. The only difference is on the places where you can put the breakpoints. In process, you can put on the before and after activity and the sequence flow, meaning the transition. In the decisions, you can only put on the before and after, but then you can put it on decision service, and BKM's node.
Okay, so we could also, as you mentioned, debug or test the inputs of the BKMs and see what they return and isolate a little bit more that to help this. Good. That's not really a public question. I'll try to address that in private, I guess. I think the other questions are really specific. I would probably not go there if someone else has some other question. Otherwise, I guess we will wrap up. Anything else you wanted to mention, Magic, before we leave?
Yeah, I think that what is really interesting in this release is the debugging testing capabilities, because it's quite unique when it comes to possibilities, what you can do, especially the suspending and resuming at different places. And as we've demonstrated today with the decision, it applies as well for the call activities and sub-processes. So if you have a process that calls another process, you can do exact same debugging by simply opening the child process or the sub process and put the breakpoints there. And that applies both if you have the sub process within your model, meaning like a separate hub of the separate model of in the same diagram, or if you include them from another file, another diagram. This gives you all the capabilities that you can look at the data, inspect the data, and modify the data to fit into what your expectations are. Combined with the tracing capabilities, where you have both the very basic use of the input and outputs, you have the details as well in the technical format if you would like to dig into more. But that will really equip you with so much power to understand what your decisions and processes are doing while they are executed.
Okay, maybe one last one for the road. Someone is asking, in the system of record, can we have multiple processes connected to it at the same time?
Yes. Otherwise, it would not have much of a value, right? Because that would then mean it's pretty much the same as the data object, but the data store are externalized and available for concurrent access to it, both reading and writing. Obviously, if you start modifying the same rows of it, there might be a conflict that one will override the other, but it does not suspend from accessing that at the same time.
All right, so I guess we're at time. So thank you everyone for attending this webinar. As I mentioned before, we will be sending out in the next few days a link to this webinar. It's going to be posted on our website as well. And I hope we'll see you again for one of our upcoming webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And have a great day.